It's clear that the biggest priority Kansas State is leaning towards in this transfer portal is bringing in winners.
You are Locked On Kansas State, your daily podcast on the Kansas State Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Kansas State, your daily Kansas State Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Christian Rauh, and thank you so much for making Locked On Kansas State your first listen every single day. Maybe even your second listen today if you're listening for this second possible segment, if you will, diving back into this basketball chatter. I'm your host, Christian Rauh, and this is going to be another dig into the men's basketball team. We're diving into another transfer. We're talking about how this new lineup might look. And then with the time just ticking away with building this roster, we need to know what's going on across the waters in the international market where Kansas State apparently is putting a lot of pressure on. Before we dive into that, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Well, if you joined me this morning, we talked about Akron transfer Nate Johnson. We talked about all the departures with CJ Jones, Doug McDaniel, Brendan Hawson, Achor, who is now with Mississippi State after leaving the team early last year. And we talked about what production is left. We're going to dive more into that on today's show. Had just way too much to talk about to add it into one show as we're diving in and getting some just more digestible content for you here on Locked On Kansas State. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. We're building up this channel. Already past 800 subscribers. 800 of you love this show, and I thank you so much for joining me every single day. And if you're here for a second time today, welcome. And I just want to dig into another conversation here. And we've talked about the two other transfers. We've had a show for the two other transfers so far, and we didn't get to this one in the middle. So for the second show today, I wanted to make sure we let off with that and talk about what could be maybe seen as the biggest surprise with the addition of UNC Wilmington's big man, Khamari McGriff. And according to On3, this was a surprise because not many people knew that this was even a possibility. They didn't know that there was even any sort of, conversation between the coaching staff and McGriff until just a couple hours before he made his announcement. Now, McGriff played for UNC Wilmington, and as I mentioned at the beginning of this show, 4 consecutive seasons McGriff brought with 4 consecutive 20-win seasons at UNC Wilmington. So bringing in winners, 20-plus wins. He has NCAA tournament experience, just like we have from Nate Johnson. Bashir is going to be the only player out of the portal so far that is not bringing either NCAA experience or winning culture, but the guy shoots 15 threes or whatever the case it is. So you're bringing in that type of sharpshooter. He might turn into a project, to be completely honest, because his defense is so bad. He just might be there for shooting and shooting only. So hopefully, I know we're not talking Bashir today. We're going to move on here for a second, but hopefully they can find a way to make Bashir just a bench player, because it sounds like there's a lot of holes in this game just the more I dig into it. But McGriff committed to Kansas State. He averaged 11.5 points and 4 rebounds this season. And that might not sound like a lot to you. And that's because he didn't play as a starter. And I know you might think, okay, hang on a second. UNC Wilmington, we're bringing a guy that came off the bench for UNC Wilmington, not UNC, not the Tar Heels. We're talking about the Seahawks of UNC Wilmington. And yes, that is true. He did come off the bench, but he came off the bench for a player that is now playing for West Virginia, hit the portal as well. So there's, multiple things with this game that you can be excited about. And according to a couple of reports that I'm digging into and what I've seen from just a few highlights, I did go back and watch the highlights from Wilmington's play in the NCAA tournament. He has some offensive excitement, and I would expect him, he's a big, I would expect him to be, I don't want to say perfect, but he's definitely a better role for the 4 than he is the 5. if you're not considering him to play like out on the wing. Now, he has shown that he can play some of that as well in the past, but I think his main presence is going to be down low in that 4 or 5 role. Could be a player that we see split time with Tariq Smith. Could be something that splits time with maybe somebody else coming in the near future, because there is still, as we mentioned earlier on today's show, this morning's show, 7 open spots on this Kansas State roster. We are nearing May. I know that we just finished March Madness. And I know if you listen to some of the big heads in college basketball, like John Rothstein, he says we sleep in May. Kansas State's not going to be able to get any sleep if they don't have a damn roster to fill. And to be honest, I don't think they can afford to get any winks anyways, because what we have seen over the past few seasons with this team is they're not ready when the season starts anyways. So maybe they should focus on sleeping in, I don't know, half of May, the beginning of May. That's it. They got to get to work a lot earlier. And in order to get to work, you got to have a roster to work with. And that they don't have that right now. Just 3 additions to the portal, and McGriff being, I know On3 used the word surprised for a different reason, but I'm going to say, but it's kind of underwhelming. The entire portal so far for Kansas State, maybe it's because of what we had last year. Maybe it's because we spent so much money in the portal last year. We were seen as the top portal class, at least in the eyes of a couple of the recruiting boards. And of course, money was a big thing, and we're still hearing about that now. And I'm sure we're going to hear about it for the beginning of the season as well, for one of the storylines for Kansas State. Couldn't make the tournament, although they had a huge NIL budget. Didn't work out. They brought Coleman Hawkins over. Didn't work. I'm sure we're not going to hear the end of it, right? Maybe that's why I feel like this is underwhelming. Maybe I'm not giving these guys enough credit, and that's probably on me, and I hope I'm wrong, and I apologize ahead of time if I am, right? But I just don't feel excited. I don't feel excited yet. I feel optimistic, but I am definitely cautious. Probably like 80-20 scale on the levels of cautious to optimistic. And I would like that to be way more balanced right now, and I'm not even close. Maybe that changes when we add more in the portal. Maybe that changes when we see a non-conference schedule that is a little better when it comes to trying to make a better resume for the tournament. I don't know. But right now, what I can tell you is that with Nate Johnson, with Bashir, and with Khamari McGriff, I probably should say his name right, Khamari McGriff, 3rd time's a charm, we now have 7 players on the roster. Those 3, you got Tariq Smith, who's considered a transfer as well from the portal. He came in the last cycle. And then you have 3 players returning for Kansas State. As of right now, unless things change, the portal is still open. David Castillo, Taj Manning, and Moby. David, Taj, and Moby. That's it. Out of those 3, your leading scorer from last season is David Castillo, 2.5 points per game. It's crazy, right? It's crazy. You got to find a way to figure that one out for sure. According to On3, McGriff was in a recruiting battle for this one. Kansas State won this one out. So we want to take small victories. Go for it. I think you deserve it. Take those small victories if you can. And they held off both Oklahoma and Pitt for him to commit to the Wildcats. Now, I have seen this on message boards. I've seen this on social media. I've seen this just from a conversation from a few of my good Kansas State buddies that really follow very closely to what the Cats are doing. The idea was supposed to be that they were going to look for traits. They were going to look for certain things that these players possess to attack this next season. Most of them with more than 1 year of eligibility as well. going all back to this whole Houston model, right? Which obviously didn't work. Obviously is not working because you're only bringing back 3 players and you're losing over 90% of your scoring from last season. So they're trying to, I guess, again, shift the culture of this team. The fact that we're hearing these players commit so fast, with Nate Johnson entering the portal on a Thursday and then commits just a few days later without even going to Manhattan. And then you're also hearing McGriff, who committed before even visiting the campus. You got to think that maybe they're not doing that. Maybe they are still looking for certain traits, but maybe they're not. They're still focusing and still pushing that NIL a little bit. We're in this weird moment, this weird period right now in college athletics where we are still in the wild, wild west. This may be the last portal for college basketball that we are in, the wild, wild west, with this new settlement hearing coming out on Capitol Hill, all these new rules and regulations that are about to possibly change college athletics as we know it could be coming down and being implemented very soon. But anything that happens before, they're not going to be able to change. We hear a lot of collectives. We hear a lot of reports, especially in the football portal window right now, of people front-loading NIL deals to make that happen, to make sure that they can take care of whatever needs to be done before whatever this settlement hearing decides on. We focus on this whole 105 roster thing for the football team being the big deal for the settlement thing, but this is a huge deal for every sport, basketball included. And I think we are seeing something right off the bat. I think we're seeing before, even though the settlement hearing hasn't been official, the looming possibilities, I think, have already changed how we view the transfer portal. Maybe that's how I'm feeling this way. I'll talk to you more what I mean by that in just a minute, right after this break, as we dig into more college basketball, men's basketball for the Kansas State Wildcats, and then just looking at this lineup and what's left and what is needed, because there are some glaring holes still for this Wildcats squad. Again, we're almost in May, folks. Time is ticking. Let's talk about that next, right here on Locked On Kansas State. Today's episode of Locked On Kansas State is brought to you by Game Time. There's nothing like the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game. Every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment feels huge. It's electric in the arena, and with Game Time, you can be part of it without the stress of last-minute ticket hunting. Game Time makes it fast and easy to get your playoff tickets, even when demand is sky high. Prices up on the app actually go down as tip-off gets closer, and their last-minute deals can save you up to 60%. Count me in. Here's why I use Game Time. It's the last-minute deals that are a absolute game winner for me. You save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, comedy, concerts, theater, you name it. I just checked it out for a Seattle Kraken game as I was up here on the West Coast, and Game Time just secured me in. I'd pay $50 for parking, but for the tickets, I was all for it. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back, Locked On Kansas State, your daily Kansas State Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Christian Rauh. And what I meant by this with the revenue sharing thing, obviously this settlement hearing's coming in, but maybe we're not seeing, and maybe it's just me. If you think the same way, let me know in the comment description below, because I would like to hear your thoughts. But do you feel like the talent level of the portal is lower this year? Maybe that's why I'm not excited. Maybe that's why I feel underwhelmed about the additions so far. I don't care that they're from mid-major schools. That doesn't bug me. I'm a big fan of mid-major basketball. I think that there's a really, honestly, I think that there's a very small level of change when you are talking about good players at a mid-major. I think it's a very, it's not a, I wouldn't say the word easy is probably the wrong word, but it's not a difficult change of scenery if you're comparing it to basketball, like in comparison to like football. I think, basketball is basketball. Yes, you have tougher defenders. The game might be a little faster, but I think ultimately you can figure it out a lot easier than on the football side. But with this new revenue sharing, do you think the talent level is lower with the people in the portal? I know the numbers aren't lower. I know people are entering the portal at a extremely high number. But are programs being able to keep their players they want because of this NIL, being able to front load things? And if so, why didn't Kansas State do that? Why didn't Kansas State be able to keep Brennan Hausen, who's now in Iowa with Ben McCollum and Bennett Sturts? That one's going to bug me for a while. It's going to bug me for a while. Or Doug McDaniel, who we're hearing rumblings that he was kind of persuaded to come into the portal. Money talked. Was the money offer too high for Jerome Tang and the rest of the coaching staff and Kansas State to say, yeah, Doug, we'll keep you. But instead, you know what? We'll let you hit the portal and then we'll go ship for our 4th point guard in 4 years. Where is the solution here? What's the solution for Kansas State? Is the solution a coaching change? What is it? Like, what is the exact moment to where you're like, where you feel that you are back in good graces with this squad? Think about that, because I really want to know what it needs to be, what this fan base needs to get the trust back from this squad. Because I don't think it's there. I don't feel like that there's any trust right now with this men's basketball squad. You're seeing the football team do very good things. You see the women's basketball team make the Sweet 16. But yet all this money was given to this men's basketball squad, and what have we had to show for it over the last 2 seasons? Right? Interesting things. So as I mentioned, I think that there's obviously some glaring holes heading into this segment, even with after Bashir, after getting McGriff, and after getting Nate Johnson. Of course, there's still some players that you're going to have to fill the voids. I think the biggest thing you have to fill is the point guard situation. David Castillo right now, I think, is your front runner for point guard. And I kind of went into this on this earlier episode today, but I don't think you want him to be your starting point guard off the bat, unless there is a huge buildup, a huge growth from him this offseason. I think you would love to see him come off the bench. I think you would absolutely love to see that happen, and then bring another proven player in to be your point guard. I don't think Nate Johnson is a guy that should be the point. I think he could. I think he's seen better as a combo guard. I think Bashir, just with back to his defense, is not great. He didn't facilitate great at Monmouth either, a losing school. I think you have him more as a guard as well. So I think you find a way to make them your 2 or your 3, or hopefully you can put Bashir on the bench and have him come in just for, shooting situations. Obviously, I know what that means. You shoot all the time, but you pick and choose, right? Having him come off the bench, maybe being your 6th man, or have Castillo be your 6th man. But it takes a lot of work for you to get there. And right now they're not there. With 7 open scholarships, point guard, obviously, I think, is a priority. And then bigs, really only got McGriff right now. Smith, you can consider a wing or you consider a big. I think you can go either way there. Moby, I think I consider him a wing. I don't think you have a true number 5, a true 5 on the team right now. So I think that's the biggest addition. That point guard and bigs. You're 1 and you're 5. You got plenty of people in the middle there, 2 3s and 4s. You can split some time. That's great. But you got to find a way to facilitate the ball. And I don't think you have that right now. I don't think you have that at this moment. Maybe that changes with this new things that we're hearing that Kansas State's attacking right now. Maybe that's why Kansas State is adding just mid-major players, and maybe these are going to be depth pieces when they're all said and done. because they are attacking the international market very hard. There are 3 names that I'm hearing, and we'll see if any of those become a Kansas State Wildcat very soon. We'll get into those, talk about those 3 players to wrap up this show right here on Locked On Kansas State. Today's episode of Locked On Kansas State is also brought to you by Prize Picks. Baseball season is in full swing, and there's no better way to get in on the action than with Prize Picks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With Prize Picks, you pick more or less on at least 2 players' projections, and if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. Whether it's strikeouts, RBIs, or first inning runs, Prize Picks keeps you in every game and keeps that game exciting. My favorite thing to do is building that lineup. This week, I'm picking Aaron Judge for more than 1 home run. I think that's really easy. And count me in for Bobby Witt Jr. as well for more than 1 stolen base. It's that easy. I mean, you kidding me? Getting Aaron Judge and Bobby Witt together. They both battled for the AL MVP last year. Perfect time to get that in for Prize Picks. It's fast and simple. Setting up a lineup takes less than 60 seconds. And when you win, that payout is quick, safe, and secure. What better than getting the money you won fast back in your pocket? Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's Locked On College as the code for $50 off instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. And welcome back to Locked On Kansas State, your daily Kansas State Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Christian Rauh. Do me a favor, click that subscribe button. We are diving into plenty of stuff throughout the week here. Basketball, women's basketball, football, you name it. There's so much to talk about here on Locked On Kansas State. So hit that subscribe button and leave me a comment as well. Ask some questions. Give me your thoughts on the episode. Like, for example, do you think the transfer portal is less when it comes to the talent level this year? Do you think that's something that you are seeing as well? Or maybe that's just me. Let me know in the comment description below. And again, thank you so much for watching or listening. We're going to talk international market now because I do think that there is a spot for this team that could hold an international player, and I hope that does happen. But Jerome Tang has been reported. It's been reported that Jerome Tang has been very heavy in the international market. Going back to kstateonline.com on 3 guys for Kansas State, Derek Young put out a report the other day that talked about some of the targets that he's watching very closely, and 2 of them were international players. So I wanted to give him the shout out there. There also been reported elsewhere as well. Elias Rapique is one of them, out of Germany, plays in the Bundesliga League, which is also the Euro League, according to On3, which he thinks is the second best competition in the world. Is a wing player, which is something that we already have, but again, at a 21 years old, could be something that's very interesting. I'd be all for it. Again, not a primary ball handler though, so not a guard, something that we would need. But if you're talking about a player who's already playing in the professional side of the league, wanting to try and find his way into college ball, Kansas State could be a nice landing spot for that. You got to find a way to have an identity. If the Houston model's not working, if this constant change out recycling of transfer portals isn't working, maybe the international market will work very good. Now, here's a guard, international guard, Andrej Kostic. And according to On3, says might be the most intriguing prospect of the ones that they listed in this one. In one of his most recent performances, put up 30 points, 8 assists, and 4 rebounds. Stat stuffer like that. We had somebody who just did that last year in Coleman Hawkins, was seen as our best player on the team. Only 18 years old, could have an NBA future, and if he's with Kansas State with Jerome Tang, could be very good. It could be really nice. According to the report, was visited by Jerome Tang and Coach Anthony Winchester. So gotta love that one as well. And then gotta shout out my buddy Joe Tillery, who has put out an interesting video on Matthew Gruchik in the past as well. Haven't heard much of him in the past lately from him with some Kansas State buzz, but we know we've seen it in recently in the past. But he's a dog. He's an absolute shooter as well. in February, won the MVP for the tournament in the EuroLeague Next Gen tournament. Absolute shooter. I think he has NBA futures written all over him as well. If you could find a way to get two of these players, and if I had to pick two, Grujic would be number one and Kostic would be number two. Getting a guard and Kostic and then Grujic. If you get the two players, my underwhelming feelings would be completely out the window. I would feel so much different about this transfer portal window. So maybe that's what I'm waiting on. Maybe I'm waiting on this whole need for just one splash, one big splash. And the pieces that have came in so far aren't, with the exception of Nate Johnson, because I think he's an absolute unit, are going to be pieces that aren't starters. That'd be great. And that might change the feeling that we think about this team moving into the new year. If we added at least one of these players, I think that you can change the way you think about Kansas State heading into the new year. Are we a tournament team? I think you still need more work other than just one international player. But I think it helps your chances, especially if it's someone with an NBA future like Matthew Grujic or someone like Andrej Kostic, right? Transfer portal still wide open. There's still some more opportunities for them to add more pieces as well, stateside and internationally. But I want to see some sort of splash. Before the month is over, I think we need at least one more splash, maybe a big one. I mean, a big one would be great because there's been so many just bad news with freshmen decommitting, reopening their recruitment, with Doug McDaniel leaving, with Brendan Hawson leaving. It's just something that we got to find a way to get better at. And right now, we're not there. All right, I'll be back again with another episode very soon. But until then, I appreciate it and thank you so much for making Locked On Kansas State your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On NFL Draft with Damian Parson and Keith Sanchez. As your favorite collegiate players get ready for the next level, get your latest draft rankings, rumors, and news every day. Find Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Please like the video. Please subscribe. And this has been Locked On Kansas State.